But eventually in TNA, you did leave, and a couple times actually. But one was, you had a visa issue. That's one thing. Another one was just you had a pregnancy. So that's a whole different story. But I did some research, and it seems in 2012, when you left because you said you weren't feeling, appreciated, and you weren't being valued is actually the word you use, valued. Is that really why you left? Because it feels like a lot of people started feeling that way. If you weren't an ex-WWE wrestler, you suddenly got kind of pushed to the side a little bit, and I felt that was really awkward for the beautiful people.
Well, it was a change in management that kind of was the catalyst for that, because once again, Vince, we have 14 girls on the roster. Vince is going to make sure that 10 to 12 of those girls, if not all of us, are somehow incorporated on the show, right? So it was always very fair. And then once, and I will just say this because they were not fun to me and I was not fun to them, Eric Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard, once they kind of came in and got an office position, it was just for me anyway, they were so nice to me before they had any kind of position. And then once they got in a position, they would just walk by me like they never saw me ever. And they changed up so much stuff. And then it did become at least 40% less people that were always on the shows before were on the shows. And it was minimal. And there was tumbleweeds blowing by backstage. There was nobody there. And I happened to be in the storyline with Winter at the time, and it sucked. So then they didn't like it. So then it was just we're just not going to do anything with that. So, and we were all paid per appearance. So if you don't work, you're not getting paid. So, and I had already been there for 5 years at that point. They already knew what I could do. But once Vince kind of got pushed out, a lot of it just was real negative and went downhill. And I ended up quitting in July 2012.
Pretty much management is the reason you just said is the reason things change. And I think a lot of people, again, I was a TNA fan from when it was NWA TNA on Wednesday nights, $10 pay-per-views. I started then, and we got to a point, and I wasn't there, so I can't really say who did what. But once Hulk Hogan came in,
I can.
Then the narrative online is once Hulk Hogan came in, and
Hulk gets a lot of flack. I really liked Hulk. I put it all on Pritchard and Bischoff.
Okay. Because again,
maybe
right.
Hulk did things I don't know about, but Hulk was actually very helpful to me in the end. We spoke on the phone for an hour. He totally had my back, and the decision to quit was mine.
Right, of course. But again, this is me talking about how if you do research on TNA ever, it's always Hulk Hogan and his buddies, buddy maybe Eric Bischoff, come in and they're like, hey, we're gonna suddenly move from Thursdays to Mondays. We're gonna go head to head with Raw. And that was a bad decision in my book. You don't do that. You had your niche, you had your audience. Why change it up? And then you had changing constantly, and that didn't really work out. Six Sides was gone. So yes, management, I think, is a reason why things went awry and eventually led us down the path where Impact is now. But you're saying you left management, Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard are the two big reasons why you decided to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because it
and
seems...
Dixie was just not a good situation with the three of them.
I was going to say, my next question was, do you feel like Dixie Carter did a great job until she started listening to other people? Once she started having people whisper in her ears, was there a narrative that suddenly she wasn't about just the company, she was about being a star on TV herself and suddenly taking over as a female Vince McMahon?
Okay, she wishes, for one thing. She wishes. I can't. Jeff Jarrett did a good job.
Yeah.
Running things. I wouldn't put that on her. As far as running things. It was her family's money. But I had heard of a situation where Eric had a conversation with her in the offices that really made her flip a switch, and it went less from a kind of cozy, family-ish, nice vibe backstage to being cold, heartless, kind of just gray, kind of vibe. And it was everybody could feel it. No one liked it. But Yeah. Well, yeah, she definitely had the wrong people in her ear giving her very bad advice. And well, we see where that took them.
Right. And on Jeff Jarrett's podcast with Conrad Thompson, he has said numerous times that once Jeff Jarrett himself was pushed out of power, he originally was the wrestling guy. So Dixie would go to him for wrestling advice. But once, you know, bigger names, as in a Kurt Angle or a Hulk Hogan or Eric Bischoff, Bruce Pritchard, those names technically are bigger. So Jeff says he was no longer talked to, and she would go talk to these other people who, you know, Hulk Hogan, we all know who Hulk Hogan is. You know, he's probably, besides The Rock, the most popular wrestler ever, besides maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin as well. So when he's there, of course you're going to go ask for him for advice. And I'm not putting this all on Hogan, but it seems that Dixie Carter, like you just said, might have been listening to the wrong people. And suddenly you said,
oh, definitely
let us down to where Impact
and then
Wrestling
she just went
up.
off in her own world. Like she wanted to be Stephanie McMahon so bad. And she ended up having like 80% of the knockouts ended up getting pushed off the show because Dixie had to have 11 segments every show.
Yeah.
And it was like, just put herself all over the show. And it's like, that's not what people want.
No.
This is not what people are tuning in for.
No. And unfortunately, that's actually, again, once the 6-sided ring turned into 4 sides, I tapped out and I dipped out on Impact TNA for a while. And only recently, past 2 years, I came back. But I'm just, you know, it's good to talk to you about this because I think a lot of people want to know the side of what was happening backstage that led to the departure of so many talented people.
A mess. It was a mess.
It
went from being so great. It's amazing to just see a couple people in high up positions be like shocked. Basically, once like Jeff and Vince, especially Vince, and Vince like was so heartbroken on the phone with me one time because I was talking to him because I was already kind of starting to like get written off a little bit. And he's like one of my biggest supporters. And it was just a thing where he was like, I am all of my power in writing and everything I do has to go all the way up here. Whereas before that was just it. Now it's got to go through this person and this person up this lot or whatever. And then they don't like it and they change it because they didn't like Vince and they didn't want to continue Vince Russo's storylines. They want to come in and it was all their new thing. And I mean, obviously all of the things ended up happening after that, which is like everything just started going downhill. And then it was like on a yearly basis, every year at the 11th hour and the 59th minute, it was like the company was for sale and like, who's going to buy us? Who's going to save it? And what desolate channel are we going to be on that no one's going to have? And that all that stuff started from like Jeff and Vince kind of being shoved out and Dixie doing whatever she was doing and all the bad advice. And yeah, bad.
Well, you brought up people trying to buy TNA. One of them was Billy Corgan. He put a lot of money into that business, but then obviously he purchased NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, and you know you're involved with that as well. So what's it like working for the Smashing Pumpkins?
Oh my God. Well, we did, like, I got to work with Billy in TNA because he was there for a period of time where he was helping with creative. So like, I think it was probably 2014, maybe, was it around there? Maybe 2014, 2015, I think. Super cool. I grew up on the Smashing Pumpkins. Like, I remember watching it on Much Music in Canada. Like the Today video was #1 on every Trace in the music video. So like, I've always been a fan of the Pumpkins. So like to see Billy, and he's so smart. He's so smart. And I think that's that whole being a songwriter. You know what I mean? Like I could never write a song. I would never know how to write a song. You know what I mean? But I feel like that's a whole nother level in your brain of like creativity to be able to like write songs and just albums and all this kind of stuff. He's so creative and he loves wrestling. Like he's a real, true, legit wrestling fan. So he gets joy from it. Like just being at the last tapings, like I literally watched him fall on the floor laughing at stuff. Like it was just like, he's so fun. So we kind of already have, and then like, I think myself and his partner Chloe, I think we were both pregnant at the same time too. Like our boys are like close in age, so we just like, we've always kind of seen each other and bonded and talked and all that kind of stuff. And he's really cool. He's really, really cool. And it's always the best to be working for somebody who's very easy to talk to, who listens to your ideas and just wants to have fun too.